the Stolen Children Generations, a groundbreaking report that led to what we have each year as Sorry Day, which has also become called Journey of Healing for some years. It seems to have gone back to Sorry Day again. But basically many Indigenous children were taken from their families and communities, and so there's an organisation called Link Up that has been set up to link them back to families and community again. Also in 2008, on the 13th of February, then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, almost the first thing he did on his national agenda was the apology. Now, Norman and I were there in Parliament House, Canberra, for that. It was incredibly moving time, and many of you would have seen it on TV or on videos, and at some stage we thought we might actually do a kind of education program in the gallery here once a month, a workshop or movie or something like that. So we'll probably show that down the track for anyone who maybe has not seen it, but a very moving time. And basically, you know, some people have said, oh, well, what's the good of saying sorry when you don't do something about it? And in fact, Kevin Rudd did do something about it. The Closing the Gap program is the follow-on from the apology. And what that does is look at the gap in socio-economic statistics, whether it's health, education, employment, various measures, infant mortality, etc., life expectancy, just to see what the gap is and try and close that gap between the Indigenous and non-Indigenous community. So there's been some success in getting children through to year 12, but a lot of the measures, the gap is still very wide. Next one. So, beautiful photo there. As I said, Sorry Day 2 into the journey of healing. We'll move on to the next one. This is the painting that Norman gave Kevin Rudd that was in his office in Parliament House, Canberra, for a number of years. Now, he didn't present it on the day of the apology. He presented it in Reconciliation Week 2011 to basically say thank you and I forgive you. And it's a beautiful painting. You can see here Parliament House, the date there, and hands lifted up. They're the hands of one nephew of Norman's and two nieces of Norman's, when they're a lot younger, with their hands on them. Okay, next one. So this is the other important event, and we're actually had the anniversary of that today, May 27. I see just lately in Canberra they're actually calling this Reconciliation Day in the ACT, but it's always been called Recognition Day all these years because it's the anniversary of the 1967 referendum. And basically the 1967 referendum, what happened, instead of Aboriginal people being left out of the census, some people say they were counted as flora and fauna. I need to do a little bit more research on that one. But basically they were not counted in the census as people, as part of the population of Australia, which is horrendous when you think about it. However, there was a 10-year campaign, 100,000 people signed petitions, and in 1967, with the bipartisan support of both major parties, it went through with over 90% of people supporting that Indigenous people should be counted in the census. Now, a lot of people think that Indigenous people didn't vote at this time. That's actually not the case. It happened in all states of Australia in 1962 except Queensland, which was a bit later. Okay, next one. Now these were some of the key people in the referendum campaign. Lester Wright, Gordon Bryant, Faith Bandler, Harold Holt, Doug Nichols, Harry Penrith, Wynne Ramsey and William Wentworth. That's quite a famous photograph, that one. And look, really, Cairns, believe it or not, Cairns Indigenous people played a very important role in that, including people like Joan Guinness and Edwin Scott. We'll go on to the next one. Campaign to be counted in the census, a resounding result over 90%. And that was very unusual. The other thing the 1967 referendum did was make it possible for the Commonwealth Government to make legislation for Indigenous people, whereas beforehand only state governments could do that. That was extremely important for Queensland because we had a particularly recalcitrant state government with Joh Bjelke-Petersen at the head, and we had a very racist legislation in Queensland called the Queensland Aborigines Act, which basically there are a lot of human rights abuses with that. And so it meant a lot to Indigenous people in Queensland at the time to have that result. So next one. So this is Morgan Dana and Norman's table. You actually see it over there. It was a backdrop to his talk. And basically you can see there that map of Australia and voting yes and black and white together. And I think that was a really important statement. One thing that the Centre for International Reconciliation and Peace did, which Norman and I founded, and our family has supported us in wonderfully all these years, is on the 40th anniversary, we basically held a ceremony where we honoured many of the people in Cairns who had been involved in that referendum fight and gave them certificates. Many of them aren't with us anymore, but we were pleased that most of them were alive at the time. There were a couple that we had to give their children the certificate for them. Next one. The Victorian Aboriginal Advancement League was active in that 1960 referendum campaign, and that was something that William Cooper, the person that talks about, this was an organisation that was the one that came on the back of the one that he founded, Sir Pastor Doug Nichols and others. And with the local group and the Victorian group and other state groups, they formed FACATSI, Federal Council for Advancement of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. And FACATSI did the main running on the referendum. So here are some of the local people that were very involved in that campaign. Gladys and Tiger O'Shane and their family, Pat, Margaret, Danny, Terry and Tim. You've probably seen them, some of them like letters to the editor still occasionally. Also Pedro and Ruth Wallace, Mira and Eric Colopi, Eddie Power, Ellie Ware, Pedro, Peter and Joe Rivara, Evelyn Scott, Alf Neal, Stan Connolly, Mark Noble, Sandra Guinness, Jack Conway and a lot of Bright supporters. And as I said, Joe Guinness and Evelyn Scott were very involved with that too. So next one. So this is the third, basically, anniversary or day that is marked, Mabo Day. And that's on June 30, and I can't forget that actually because that's on my birthday. So, basically Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people lived in apartheid kind of situations until very recent history. In 1982, there was a deed of grant and trust or dogged legislation that came in that basically got made the reserves to be trust areas with the Aboriginal councils or Torres Strait councils holding them in trust for the people. Okay. Now, on Murray Island, or Mer, Eddie Mabo and some of the others decided, well, we're not going to accept those doggets, that's not the real thing, and so they took it to court after a 10-year battle, basically, in 1992. We know that the High Court made what's called the Mabo decision. Unfortunately, Eddie died 6 months before that, but is quite revered for that particular struggle. And following the year 1993, Prime Minister Paul Keating actually enacted the native title legislation. And so basically it really changed history in Australia, because before that Australia had the legal fiction of terra nullius, that it was an empty land. Before the British came here to colonise, now it was recognised that the people who lived in the land did have native title rights. Next one. There's a photo of him in Corky Mabo. Next one. Just a couple of quick ones for you. This was 2 years ago. The Sea of Hands Reconciliation Week installation there. The Catholic Church asked Norman to be the artist on that Sea of Hands, and so basically he made an Aboriginal flag design. He used the hands, and there's a wonderful garden planted there with the students from various Catholic schools planting hands there. It's a Holy Cross planted there with Norman. Next one. Also, Sea of Hands, Norman did a Reconciliation Week installation in the shape there that of the headdress of the Torres Strait Islanders, and it was actually 25 years since the Mabo decision. So 2017 is a really important anniversary year. Next one. Also, Norman made a large boomerang to commemorate 50 years since the 1967 referendum, and he planted it there at the Catholic Cathedral along with the Sea of Hands. Next one. Being Christians, he also put the cross there right beside the, because that's a reconciliation scripture, right beside the Catholic priest's home. Next one. And this is some of the children there. Class 5S joined Norman in singing the Reconciliation song. And this photo is in the King's Post. Seems to be going in and out, never mind. And so one of the children put that particular story and photo in the King's Post. Next one. And there was a mass there, and the children all sang the Reconciliation song with Ryan. Next one. Now, interestingly, as you know, today it's been announced that Kevin Wyatt has been made... Ken Wyatt, sorry. Ken's been made the first Aboriginal Minister for Indigenous Affairs, and he's also the first Aboriginal to be in Australian Federal Cabinet. So that's him there, second from the right. So basically, and you can see Warren Edge on the left, and that's Bronwyn Bishop, who was the Speaker at the time. So basically, because what was happening at the time, and this one here was in 2013 in December, what was happening at the time was that there was a lot of talk of needing to have Indigenous people included in the Constitution of Australia, because when Australia was constituted as a nation in 1901, basically it was the Commonwealth and states that came together. No mention of Indigenous people. So there was a big push to recognise Indigenous people and also to remove racism from the Constitution. And there was an expert panel that Ken was on, and a number of others like Noel Pearson. And basically Norman took the recommendations from the expert panel, made it into a petition, and went all around Australia in his own time and finance and got signatures. Now he also, that's on paper in the proper format, also that particular boomerang, a very large boomerang that he made, and got 360 signatures on the back, presented that to Bronwyn Bishop, the then Speaker, and Warren Edge presented it to Parliament in December 2013. So next one. So again, this was February 2016. So Norman had the rest of the 5,000 signatures, and Warren Edge organised for him to be able to give it to Tony Smith, who was the Speaker at the time, and then it was presented to Parliament. Next one. And this is the last one. This is just to bring you up to date, even though this was 2017. It was in Reconciliation Week, and it was 2 years ago today. However, there hasn't been much progress on that, as you would know. So basically, what was decided in the Uluru Statement were there were consultations around Australia, and then Indigenous people went to Uluru. Basically, they said they wanted a national advisory body which was enshrined in the Australian Constitution, so that it couldn't be removed like ATSIC had been previously, that previous national body. Also, they said the 1960 census, Indigenous people were counted, but now they wanted to be heard. They wanted a voice. Thirdly, they wanted a Makarrata Commission set up. Basically, another name for treaty is the Yolngu name, which means agreement and peace after hostilities. That hasn't happened yet either. And the fourth thing is a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, very similar to what they had in South Africa. So all these things have just still been sitting on the drawing board for 2 years. So we'll see what happens, but that just gives you an idea that this particular week really commemorates a lot of very important events in Australian history as per Indigenous people's wish for advancement. So thank you so much.